You've probably heard of the line, discipline beats motivation every single time. And I think that's pretty dumb. While discipline is important to further yourself and goals and your pursuits in life, it's tough to rely on it entirely when you're starting something new. Relying on being disciplined doesn't get you very far if the only reason you're doing something is because you're supposed to be disciplined in doing it. There has to be quite a delicate balance between discipline and motivation, and relying on one or the other is quite frankly a bit of a stupid idea. Hustle bros and your douchey cousin Kyle have villainized the term motivation, as though having the drive to do something somehow makes you a lesser individual than just gritting your teeth and bearing something that you hate. But why are you doing something that you hate unless there's some kind of value to it? And that's motivation. And look, I also agree that watching motivational YouTube videos with speeches from Rocky is a pretty cringe way to get motivated before your workout. And it's eventually going to stop working when your dopamine system runs out of juice from all the caffeine and motivational videos you've been blasting before your gym sessions. But what's fascinating about these hardcore hustle bros is that they usually share the message of discipline beating motivation through some kind of paradoxical motivational speech that gets their viewers amped up to be disciplined.
My morning routine takes 5 hours, and here's what it looks like.
Now, from an external perspective, I may appear to be a somewhat disciplined individual. I've trained consistently for years, my diet is pretty dialed in, I don't drink very regularly, I read a lot, and I'm always busy with a bunch of different things. But I would say that I'm an incredibly undisciplined person. If I don't want to do something, it just doesn't happen. Hell, even things that I do intrinsically want to do, but just feel like too much effort, I just won't do. But if there's something I do want to do for the value of doing it itself, or it has some long-term value for me, then it will absolutely, no questions asked, get done. And that's the secret. I think we think about motivation in entirely the wrong way. Motivation doesn't have to be listening to a hype song or having some dude screaming at you or reading motivational quotes about never giving up. Motivation is just the thing that motivates you. That seems fucking obvious. The definition for motivation is a reason or reasons for acting or behaving in a particular way. And that can be an almost infinite number of things. It could be the enjoyment of the task, or it could be the outcome of the task. Or it could be the sense of identity that doing that thing would give you within your community. Or it could even be that it contradicts some fundamental insecurity that you have. But relying entirely on discipline will eventually have you grinding your teeth away from doing some shit that you don't want to do without any reasonable justification as to why you're doing it. And these motivations will change over time. Here's an example. I started working out even though it was difficult because I was deeply insecure about the way I looked. The driving force behind my training initially was like a deep anger I had at my peers from school who had made fun of me for being very skinny. And the girls that I felt rejected me for more muscular guys because I didn't have muscles. That wasn't the case. And fundamentally below that point, I had a feeling of deep insufficiency that I thought I could fill by getting bigger muscles. But at some point in my journey, my motivation for training changed. I no longer cared about the outcome from the perspective of other people. I didn't care if I was going to get compliments or people were going to like me for having bigger muscles or like to prove anybody wrong. But rather, I enjoyed the challenge that I could place against myself. It gave me internal competition to compete with my past self and always try to improve. And on top of that, I really enjoyed the workouts themselves. Pushing myself in an individual session to see what my limits are and to train hard and to try achieve absolute muscular failure is a lot of fun to me, and I feel fantastic afterwards. So I have a double point of motivation, which may make me look very disciplined when I train at 9 p.m. at night after a long day of hard work. But in reality, I'm just doing it because it's actually fun for me and I know the benefits are worthwhile and I've got a deep intrinsic motivation. If I was just to force myself to do it all the time, I'd probably quit. And sure, there are days where I'm not feeling like it, I'm exhausted and I really don't want to do it. And those are the days that I rely entirely on discipline. And it's good to have that in reserve, but you don't have to rely on it every single day. There has to be an underlying meaning as to why you're doing the things that you're doing. But that is a very specific example where I have a few different points. It makes me look better, I enjoy the actual process and its competition with myself. But you don't even have to necessarily enjoy the task to have a motivation behind doing it. For instance, I hate running. No part of the process is fun to me. It sucks, it's painful, it hurts, I don't like not being able to breathe properly, and I don't really get the same sense of achievement that I get from lifting weights. But I know that after I've run, I'll feel fantastic, and everything in my body just starts to operate better.
Now, we may look at someone like David Goggins and assume that his absurd discipline, his ability to do these 100-mile ultra marathons, do thousands of pull-ups and break all these records, comes from a ridiculous internal willpower. But in fact, It isn't something that was always naturally in him. He was often undisciplined, he was overweight for a lot of his life, and he was unhappy with who he was previously. And it was only when he came to the realization that he didn't want to be this, when he found his motivation, which was to not be the person he previously was, that he's managed to achieve all these incredible goals and find actual internal discipline.
Another example may be entrepreneurs who may look very disciplined in their ability to sit down and just focus on building their business. And if you look at it objectively, you'd have to be out of your mind to start a business. You have to work long hours, it's lonely, it's exhausting and stressful, and on top of that, your chance of failure is like 10 times higher than the average person. And yet people do it. Why? Sure, there's some discipline behind it, but a big chunk of it is that these people are envisioning a goal. That's their motivation. The potential benefits of succeeding and the fantastic outcome that they may get far outweighs any of the pain and suffering that they have to put in now. And so they can set that aside in order to invest in their long-term ultimate goal. And they may even get a little bit of an ego boost for being able to call themselves entrepreneurs and maybe one day CEOs and feel like they're not a part of the normal rat race. And this applies over everything. Someone who studies really hard and works tireless hours to become a lawyer is probably motivated by the massive paychecks they're going to get in the future, as well as the massive ego boost from being able to call themselves lawyers because it's difficult and pretending they're on suits. And that's what keeps them disciplined. And that's totally fine because that's what gets them going. It doesn't for me. And that's why I'm not a lawyer. If you're watching this, maybe you don't have something that you care deeply about, and so you're struggling to find motivation or discipline to be able to do anything. Or maybe there's something you think you should be doing, but you don't feel like you have the discipline to be able to continue with it. So what do you do? First of all, if you really don't actually care about it and you don't feel like you can make the effort to do it, maybe reevaluate, and maybe it's not worth it. Maybe you're only doing it because of societal pressures or pressures from your parents or something like that. And then maybe that's not necessarily the journey for you, and you would succeed much more in something that you'd be intrinsically motivated by.
Let's say your family wants you to become a doctor, but you get squirmish when you see the sight of blood. You're not interested in the long hours or the lifestyle of being a doctor. You don't get any intrinsic value from being told that you're going to be a doctor. And maybe you're more interested in like the way mechanics work and things like that. And so maybe you should go into mechanical engineering, because the lifestyle of being a doctor, while it may please your family, is going to be more damaging for you in the long run. And you're going to lose the motivation and the drive to keep doing it purely for the sake of your family's happiness. So before you brute force your way into doing something difficult because you think you have to, first consider why you're doing it and if you need to. As Mark Manson often says, you're going to suffer one way or another in life. So at least consider what pain you can sustain in your life. Because making yourself suffer and taking time to do something which actually isn't very important to you is a complete waste of time and isn't worth it. And you should instead find ways to put that energy into something which is actually important to you, which will benefit you in the long run and help improve your life overall. However, if you need help to stay motivated in something important like exercise, I'm going to make a video on tips to stay motivated in the gym. So please subscribe if you want to see that. Godspeed and thank you for watching.